Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger, and this one is really important. I started with the peace greeting only because I'm addressing those with whom I'm at peace, but this is still about the gender war. First, shout out to Ryan G, Darknesses. My shout out to you was for two things. One is for coming through so generously in the Jet Black Air Frequent Flyer Lounge on the Buy Me a Coffee platform. And then it is also for what you brought to my attention. And for really being engaging on that platform. Others listen, I know they do, they say so, but you actually engage. And so I get some feedback from you. The only way I can even start to pay you back is to cover what you brought to my attention. I hope the rest of you can benefit from this. Darwin McPherson, with his bald black self, with his scalp shows so shiny that you can see the camera's reflection every time he looks down, and with all that intelligence underneath that scalp, brought up a good point that I tried to cover myself before. And for the record, all these points I made about his scalp and everything else are compliments, meant to show how we black folks should really apply our wits to each other. I mean, have we ever thought about how to compliment somebody using wit just as much as we roast each other with wit? But back to the main point. Mr. McPherson brought it to our attention that many of us still follow the old model of differentiating between daughters and sons and how we raise them and what we teach them about sex. What the hell are some of us thinking? If dads teach daughters to refrain from all non-marital sex and we teach our sons to fornicate first for practice, we have to examine what it means in the long run and to what it is going to lead. And frankly, we see what it's leading to right now. One of the reasons that we have this need for all of this gender discussion is because of exactly this. If you wonder why Saudi Arabia has less gender fights on their hands than we do, it is for a few reasons, but one of them is that they don't raise their children with a different double standard. Now, they'll punish the daughter more harshly. But the families here, if they go with this double standard, well, they tend to be more backwards, better than families anyways, and they don't get far in life. And that's the truth of the matter. And after a while, some of them even fall so low as to not even count a man as a man until he's fornicated. And these men can't find women to fornicate with them. So before you know it, somebody installs a security camera outside their home. And then there's some livestock that strays nearby. And somebody rolls up in a pickup, pulls a stove up, puts his thing in the back of his livestock. And when in no time he's done and he's jumping back in his truck to drive off, not even knowing he got caught on camera. I know because I saw the video. It went viral. I don't know what happened to the man that did it, but if he was ever caught, he probably got decapitated. We follow that double standard as a whole much more so than the average family here does. So we have to prepare our sons for a world and a dysfunctional knit culture that will consider the men only based on how many women with whom they can fornicate. But that's not an option until that culture is stomped in the dust and a bad memory. And I already advocate for that, whether it's the better ones doing that or us, even if it means capital punishment for merely swaggering down the high school hallway and flexing on smaller dudes to prove a point. No jigabosity here in the black household. We intimidate only enemies, not our own people in the black household. Porch monkey behavior is inexcusable because my brother and I lost some of our childhood, especially my brother because he was younger, trying to teach our people that we aren't the porch monkeys that our enemies told us we are. McPherson was right. If boys believe that fornication with the same women taught to never fornicate is required in large amounts and with many partners for them to be men, then their manhood becomes dependent upon women, making exactly the same decision they've never been taught to make. And the women can't respect men whose manhood a woman can approve or can end. She will not respect a man whose manhood she can approve or end. McPherson was also right that the notions we have absolve men of the responsibility to be self-disciplined. It winds up sending the message to guys that we can't say no, even though most young males start off shy around women they don't know. In reality, it is a training from whomever, men or women, that tells a boy that he isn't allowed to be shy around women and he should be ready to give it up as soon as she is DTF, down to fornicate. That ruins his shyness, that would bring to a young man a sense of self-preservation that women are allowed and encouraged to keep. The same shyness, which is part of what balances against the libido in the youth. But the men are not allowed to have it from the time they're young. A boy's 11, he's taught, yeah, man, go grab him on the booty. You should always be trying to get some. If a shy boy is told that he shouldn't show fear of women, but that he also shouldn't blindly trust, let alone pursue girls and women, then he would have enough of a shyness and a sense of self-worth, a self-preservation, and this would decrease the length this would decrease his weakness. It would actually somewhat decrease the libido, and it would increase the length of time that a man can put off boning someone. I know it worked for me. Trust issues are one of the reasons I don't have more kids out of wedlock than I do. I still don't trust many women to even see me naked without trying to harm my genitals later on or trying to falsely accuse me later. Cold approaching would be something that men would say, you know what, to hell with that, because that's too risky. It's too stupid. It's not worth it. That is one of the reasons that you see women not telling men this, even when the women themselves are not DTF. They don't tell the guys how to turn it down in a way that empowers the men. You see, the shyness that boys start with does a lot in the way of forcing you to protect yourself and to not seek to fornicate. I saw women that thought it was in their nature to kick guys in the genitals because they were women. And if they thought this, then why the hell were we supposed to always pursue them and never protect ourselves? This is middle school I'm talking about. Now, I would say that we shouldn't ask men to always and forever abstain, which is in fact celibacy. But then again, as Muslims, we don't have these double standards in the religion. Some cultures do. And so we don't ask women the same thing either. Always and forever? No, we don't put that on them. As a Muslim, that is not allowed as a goal. Neither the free indulgence in bumping and grinding, nor the opposite extreme, celibacy, are the path of balance. I would recommend that families marry their daughters and sons while young, and I mean about age 20 when I say young. And don't tell me that men aren't mature enough yet. No, we already have seen it, that we have to mature sooner and faster than these women. Ain't nobody making them mature. We're just not wealthy enough yet at that age, and that's not the men's fault. Now, many fathers of daughters will say, well, where are they going to live? And my answer is another question. Where does she live while she's fornicating in the backseat of someone's car with her sneaky link that won't even commit to be a boyfriend, let alone a husband, because he simply doesn't have to, and he doesn't even have to make the money. However, we have to admit something too. McPherson pointed out that sex is a skill, not a fixed trait. Guess what? He's right about that. I know. I've been married 3 times, and I fornicated before I became Muslim, which I should not have done. And I know that you adjust to certain things if the partner isn't excessively rough or inconsiderate. But here's the flip side. On that panel, which McPherson replayed in his own video entitled 12 Reasons Women No Longer See Men as Leaders, Chicago Outlaw was right when he pointed out the difference between girls and boys which goes into their adult lives. He pointed out something important, that women have a much easier time getting smashed, and you cannot ignore this. This is largely certainly in the teens because of the training, though. If young boys are taught the same self-value and self-worth sexually that women are taught before they're even adults, the difference might still exist, but it will be a much smaller gap. Now, I noticed in high school that when presented with the idea that men also have value and should have standards and demand that a woman deserves sex like the man has to, they almost always effeminize the man with that idea verbally so as to discourage this notion. Because I was that man sometimes, and they would try it. Close friends would do it. Now, if she's a religious woman, then yeah, she might want to tell young boys the same thing I would have said because she's on a soapbox or a high horse talking down to the guys. But even the religious women would have an issue with a man saying this of his own initiative, always, always. Even that religious woman that wants to teach this of her own initiative to the boys. McPherson pointed out that these women are promiscuous because they encounter promiscuous men, and that the dinglings they take are the reason they aren't marriageable anymore. He missed something, though. I'm sure he's aware of it, but I didn't hear this. They're promiscuous because they're promiscuous. Guys trying to be promiscuous with them is not enough to convince them. They get a kick out of saying no. So what is it that really convinces them? They're just some guys they want to fuck. And they can brag about smashing this guy and fornicating with this guy to their friends. And that's what that is. So their promiscuity is not because men want it. Their promiscuity is because men agree to it. The opportunities for them to be promiscuous are because the men not only want it, but are saying yes when they present that. That's also the problem, and that's what's got to be cut out. It's the opportunity to be as promiscuous as they want to be. As I've stated, the problem is that we've been too easy. Fathers are right to tell their sons that they won't succeed in resisting the libido forever. Now, saying, well, you can't help yourself ever, even from 14 on, that's not correct. But then turning around and saying, well, the opposite extreme, or you're going to have to say no for the rest of your life, is also an extreme. Fathers would be right if they told their sons, you will not succeed in resisting it forever. But they also must tell the daughters the same thing instead of waiting until she gets too old to marry. And then the dad nervously chews his fingertips off, hoping she finds a husband before her own libido grips her and she jumps on the first handsome ding-a-ling she finds. F out my face with that sure bit. Dads of daughters fail in this. And also M. White on that panel pointed out that men who are inexperienced with women simply can't get the next woman. That's true. However, the issue behind that must also be addressed. The double standard is in fact not really upheld by men in the long run. I mean, it's not solely upheld by men in the long run. The dads involved in the lives of their sons and teaching their sons to fornicate don't understand that the loose women are the ones that get to benefit from their sons immediately and later on. That's why AC is right. Accountable commentary is right when he says no, lockout game. Don't even use them for the tizzy tour. It's a setup. I wonder where he heard that. Because you see, the loose women sell it to the sons and get the son's money while he's exposed to the danger, because she then starts to consider other ways to use her genitals, like setting up ninjas to rob them instead of just having to give up some to get some. In other words, the real reason that we should teach our sons to be sexually conservative are not the same reasons that women might want us to teach that. The women might want us to teach these sons to not pursue the drawers so that the sons become easily used for all the non-sexual things in life, allowing these women to then claim to be independent when it's convenient for them to claim that. The whole time they're smashing who they want for free and then getting somebody else that never smashed to pay. Oh wait, that's already happening. So you see why they might want us to not teach a double standard. We have to remember it's not the valid reason. We need to teach our sons to not be sexually easier than the women, but we must also teach them to not be non-sexually easier either. This is necessary to accomplish what we are really trying to teach, that their seed and their genitals have value too and aren't of a negative value just because they're males. See, I married a good woman with no misandry in her bones at all. And yet I had to remind her once about that. She tried to signal me with her eyes to go help her friend with her bag coming out the trunk. I was about to do it, but it was taking a while for my seatbelt to disengage. But when she started trying to urge me to hurry up and get out there, I had to stop her silently without saying anything that a friend might have heard. I had to hold my finger up and say, don't do that. Because right now it's the seatbelt. But if you start telling me to do stuff like that with my back already hurting me, I'll stop. I won't even try it. Do not do that. I don't owe her. I'm nice to her and I'm about to do it as a courtesy, but you don't get to command me to go and do anything for another lady. I don't have to. I can't begin to imagine what you faced when you were over there dealing with those Westernishas who were raised with the notion that you have no value at all, except a negative value, and that you must never stop working to replace that with a neutral value once they are convinced to go ahead and say, okay, it's neutral, it's not negative. It's women who really insist that men have to be sexually experienced to qualify, and that sexually inexperienced men don't qualify. And these women that have these kinds of standards to be virgins themselves, they can't stand to even consider that maybe, just maybe, they might have to communicate with a man to get what they want out of him in that bed. It's not really men out here saying that women need to start off with the sexual skills and know-how to drain our testes extra thoroughly. We understand that she might have to learn. They don't care. They know, they just don't fib a cuck. So they're demanding the men that have already learned so they don't have to talk. Well, guess what? Their standards, it is not men's double standards. It is the women's standards themselves, the double standards that are out here demanding that some women be practice dummies. Because quiet as it's kept, it would be far easier for most men to just not even have to go out and try to find some chick and convince her. That would be far easier. But men understand that if they were to sit back and wait until they found the right one, that right one has also been screwed up in the head, and she may have everything right about her except that she does not want an inexperienced man. Ask me how I know that too. Even those promiscuous men out there trying to get the value that they think they need and that they know women in the West are solely allowed by monopoly to validate, are not the reason for the actual double standards going from generation to generation. I'll point this out, how you can see that. You see, they should think analytically and critically, but since no one is teaching them how to view this, they still can't fully understand this without someone explaining the following to them. The psychosis of men and women alike is a real issue. See, a man is wrong in the eyes of women if he refuses to fornicate, and if he tries to fornicate. It's if he tries to fornicate because by virtue of him having to try that he's not attractive enough. But if he refuses to fornicate, well then women will refuse to marry that man, and mostly because those men will be inexperienced. Virgin women hate virgin men in the West, and virgin girls hate virgin boys too. Now, if they don't hate them as people, they still hate them sexually. They hate them as potential husbands, potential sexual partners with or without a marriage. I mean, they despise the idea of being a man's first. They can only respect men that have stuck it in some other women with their own consent. So we got to ask ourselves, though, if dads are teaching sons to not wait until marriage to dig their wives out, but moms are only teaching their sons whichever path they see the son not taking. Meaning, if the son's not trying, they tell him get out there and try. And if the son's trying, then they tell him to cool his heels and work on making some money and being more non-sexually useful to these broads. If this is what's going on, and the dads are teaching the daughters to wait until marriage, but the moms aren't really addressing that one way or another with the daughters, we got to ask ourselves this: where are these daughters getting the notions that inexperienced men aren't really men, And where they're getting the inability to appreciate, much less want these inexperienced men. Who's teaching them that men who don't fornicate aren't men and don't qualify? Well, the dads aren't giving them this idea. Who does that leave? The peer group and the mothers. And I suspect both because of how strongly these women are convinced of this belief. They're convinced as if there's no sort of disagreement between their peer groups on one hand and their moms and grandmoms on the other hand. They believe in the unmanliness and of the sexually inexperienced man the way they would if all women had told them that they all saw the same thing. The real balance to be found is in what Black Guru promotes and believes, which is the solution for Black people anywhere. The solution I've talked about. And the real reason that the double standard needs to be thrown out isn't so that there won't be soiled women later on, but so that there won't be so many opportunities for them to get soiled on a whim, just like there aren't such for guys. And so the guys won't be so cheap and easy a way for women to get all the expensive things in life they want without earning and saving the price for them while they consider themselves to be equal. It is so that the guys can demand the full value in exchange for what we are currently required to provide to get mostly headaches in return. It's still war. I recommend you use sexual discipline and learn that because it's still war and we must be here to win it, not to give these broads a way to keep fighting it while retiring at our expense. I want you to know male chastity so that, number one, you get rid of one of the biggest barriers anybody has to a closer relationship with God. And also, so that your libido is not another weapon in the arsenal of these misandrous broads in the West. And then also, I want you to know male chastity the right way so that your chastity is not another weapon in the arsenal of these misandrous broads in the West who only say no to sex just to leverage it and who only insist on waiting until marriage so that they can demand marriages on their terms in which they get to remain children while demanding adult rights and then demanding that you take on adult responsibilities and accept being talked to like a child. I want you to know male chastity so that when they start to come with a bunch of demands for which they're never willing to meet any corollary standards, fair standards in exchange, you can sit back and say, you know what? Never mind. Next. Because they've already tried to coordinate to make sure that when you say next, that next is years later on down the line. And you can sit back and say, yeah, but you already trained me for that. And even if you tell a woman that, what do you mean I trained you? You can sit up and say, well, you know, the way you're acting is because of an agreement you all have. And since you all are in this agreement, collectively you all trained me to live single, so I'm already used to being single. So next, and if that's 5 years down the road, that's just more money I will have earned. And yes, just by virtue of me having more money, I'm going to demand more. They still must learn, like men, to say the right answers for the right reasons. And not just as another way to get stuff in life while still being lazy. This gender war is not over, and they're not always sitting up. These ladies are not always sitting up telling you to learn to say no and have some discipline for the right reasons. Sometimes they're telling you that just because you're not the one they want out there really trying to get some. They want you to be the guy that's out there always trying to earn it, not trying to get it. Because they benefit. And so you have to stop and ask, well, how do they treat me? And what does that show? And you have to stop going around trying to prove yourselves to ladies that can never see you as proven. But you must refuse to accept responsibility for the promiscuity of the ladies when the fact is it's not you that made them promiscuous. It is merely you that gave too many opportunities for the promiscuous ones to be as promiscuous as they wanted. The fact that they can say, I'm going to have a hot girl summer, tells us something. Why the hell are we making it that damn easy for them? What are we doing? I hope that this helps out. And thank you for listening. And as always, black heart, black mind, blackout, assalamu alaikum, black heterosexual, non-select male power, just because they don't like it in the black patriarchy until extinction of judgment day. Thank you for flying with us again here on Jet Black Airways, where the phrase jet black is also a verb. Keep jet black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice, forever.